This is Brianna's Feast, and I'm here with Brian Cook at his home in Picture Butte, and it is Tuesday, August 11th, 2015. To start off, Brian, can you tell me when you were born?
I was born July 30th, 1941. I forgot the time of day, though. I think it was at night, because there was a big moon, she said, when I was born.
And was that here in Picture Butte?
No, it was at the old St. Michael's Hospital in Lethbridge that is now gone. They still have a St. Michael's, but not that one.
And were your parents from around here?
My mother was born in Bow Island, Alberta in 1913. And my dad was born in Donington, Lincolnshire in England in, I believe it was 1905 or somewhere around there.
How come your dad came to Canada?
He came because his parents decided to go farming in Canada. Well, actually, no. His father wanted to find jobs for his sons down in the eastern provinces, and when they got there in 1924, I believe it was, they found that there was no work. It was kind of a depressed era, and so someone important told them that they'd like this area, because this area is so similar to Lincolnshire. It's so very flat, and so they decided to come up here, and they bought a farm, and they lived till they were about 80 on their farm. Many descendants now.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I have one brother. His name is Cyril Cook, and he lives in Lethbridge. He has 4 children, and he is 5 years younger than I am. So he'd be just about around 70, close to 70.
Did you get along pretty well growing up with him?
That's quite a question, but we didn't fight, but we didn't really do a lot of things together. But I guess you'd say we got along. We get along much better now. Always on the phone. People say, "You were on the phone so long." And yeah, I guess it was, because like 2 hours on the phone, isn't that quite a while? So yeah.
Where did you two grow up?
Well, I started here in Picture Butte 74 years ago, pretty near to the exact week now. My birthday was just last week, I think it was. Or no, let's see, what is it? It's August now, 30th of July anyway. And I stayed here in Picture Butte until I was around 5 years old. I guess I was about 5. And then they decided to move to the grandfather's farm out at 5 miles east of here. And we really lived there. We grew up there. And I've come back. I've been back about 30, close to 40 years since I decided to buy something here and lived here. And my brother was born while we lived here, but he he doesn't remember living here. He was too young when they went to the farm. And so he basically grew up out there. And we went to school at Iron Springs instead of Picture Butte because it seemed to be, I don't know why, it was in the another district that way. And Picture Butte's always been my home. So I always wanted to come back here where I was born. So finally did.
What was school like for you?
I didn't really like school. I'm kind of like to do what I feel like all the time, and when you go to school, you can't. So, but I'm glad I went. I learned a lot of stuff. I learned how to write and spell and things like that. So it was nice in some ways. I would rather have stayed home and played all day.
What would you rather have played?
What would I have played? Oh, we had a large farm with coulees. The river was at the edge of it, and I used to love to go in exploring all over in the lots of coulees that we had. And I love to garden, so I would like to stay home and grow things. If I had my choice, I probably wouldn't have gone to school half the time.
Did you go to school right up until grade 12 in Iron Springs?
No. They only had, let's see, they had grade 9. I went to grade 9 there. And then we changed over to high school at Picture Butte. They drove us up in a bus every day.
What type of farm did you have?
I think you'd call it a mixed farm. They had grain, and they had beets at one time. I still remember them growing beets I think they must have quit when I was around 6 or so, 7 maybe. I remember the beet fields. And they had Angus cattle. They got to where they had 100 or more Angus cattle, and they'd feed the young cattle in the wintertime, feed the old cattle too, and grow the young ones. And they had pigs, and they had chickens, and they had let's see, they had they had a lot of grain. They grew lots of grain, wheat, and feed grain, much the same as everyone else at that time.
Did you help out a lot on the farm?
Yeah, I did when I got older. When I was in my teens, I used to shovel all the grain. The grain had to be shoveled off the truck into the grain bins back then. They didn't have trucks that lifted up like that, hoists on them. At least we didn't. And it was quite a job every day in the fall time. And I helped to feed the cattle. And then I started a chicken business at the farm. And I had that for approximately 10 years before I went out working for other people. And I did some beet hoeing for a while. Then I worked at Nolan Cattle Company for about 20 years as the kind of caretaker and gardener and carpenter and painter. And a few other things that they wanted done.
Was that the Nolan family that lived down by the river?
They live 5 miles east. The farm is 5 miles east, and maybe a mile and a half north after that, out here at, near Iron Springs. That was Bernard Nolan and Dora Nolan, and they're Lloyd and Larry. Larry's the only one still living now. They've all passed away. They lived a long time. About, I think Dora was 90 something when she passed away, and might have been last year, I think. I believe she was at least 90, and I think Bernard was around 90 too when he went. And Lloyd had what is that? Both of them have kind of a muscular dystrophy or something. Larry has lived almost 70 years with it, so he's got to be a record lifetime for people that have that. Lloyd, when he died at 45 or whatever, they said it was a record then. So his brother has outdone it. So they're a world record of how long they lived.
What would you like to do for fun when you were growing up?
Oh, I like to go to Lethbridge and go to movies and go to the fair, Lethbridge Fair, and go to the lakes like Park Lake or Keo Lake, any of the lakes. Traveling around. I love to travel then, which I don't really do anymore. The roads have got so busy it scares me. And these big trucks always meeting you and passing, and I don't like that too much. Nothing. I wasn't used to it.
Did you have any particular hobbies when you were growing up?
Oh, I like to paint. I'm kind of an artist. They always thought I was a great artist. And I love to garden, same as I am now. I gave up the art because I don't know, it's hard to do when you have to squint all the time and try to see stuff. And what else did I do? I used to play the mouth organ. I can play the mouth organ, the violin, the organ, the piano, anything else I forget. And of course, none of them are very good. It's not excellent playing, but it's pastime. I still have a piano, and I play the old songs. I can't play the ones that are fashionable or the things kids like nowadays. I forget it. I can't do that. So sometimes an older person wants to listen to it a little bit.
Where did you learn to play all those instruments?
I'm self-taught. Everything's self-taught with me. And I used to like cooking, and I still do some. And I like walking, going for walks, riding bicycle. That's another thing I used to do when I was a little kid. Loved to go bike riding. The farm was about 1,000 acres, and it's sort of connected with roads all over, and you'd always go down a road and I go and sit in some trees or some place like that. Sit by the river, thought that was fun. And I used to like go visiting people. They would visit people and visit the other kids from the school that lived nearby. Yeah.
What would you do with the kids when you went to go visit them?
Oh, we would, what did we do? Just sort of run around and look at different things that they had and play games that they knew. I had a cousin that lived not quite a mile away from us, south on the road south, and used to go down there, and she would always like to make mud pies, so I'd help her make mud pies. And I don't know, you sort of forget what you used to do when you're that age. I used to like to read. I read lots of books.
Did you have a favorite book?
I like Robinson Crusoe. I wanted to be Robinson Crusoe. Have my own island. It would be so nice, and I still would love that. But when you got there, you might think this is pretty remote. Didn't see anybody at all. That would be bad. But yeah, I like Robinson Crusoe, and let's see. I can't think of any other ones I liked. I like lots of them. I like different ones. I have quite a library of books now. But I like adventure books. I like going on adventures. So I like where the grandparents and family came from. What was his name now? Matthew Flinders was born there, and he's the one who circumnavigated the world twice, and he circumnavigated all of Australia, charted all of Australia, and amazing how where they lived at Marketplace, Donington, you can see the house where, or the property where Flinders was born. They tore down Flinders' birthplace, unfortunately, and they put up a beautiful home there that in probably the 1850s or so. Beautiful place, big brick house, 3 stories, 3 stories, and you can actually see that from where they lived. So it's kind of an honor. But unfortunately, they tore down the original birthplace, and they claimed it was not safe. They said it was cracking and stuff, made out of brick. I have pictures of it. I have many scrapbooks. I used to always like to make scrapbooks, and I still do. I like to get pictures from the internet, print them out, and make my own books out of it. I've got lots of them. Unfortunately, my printer's down right now, and I'm waiting to get some ink or something, start that again.
Did you ever go visit Donington, where your dad was from?
Oh, I'd love to, but no. I am afraid to fly, so that Otherwise, I might be living there by now if I could get there. I always said if I ever get there, I'm not coming back. Oh, it's nice over there. I think winters are kind of very wet and uncomfortable, but winters are very short too, so I think I'd love it there. I know lots of people on Facebook from Donington and from all over England, and learn lots of things every day. I have one group that is called Donington in Old Postcards and Photos, I think it is, and that is so interesting to see places that the relatives used to talk about. I never thought it would be possible to see that. And they were telling the truth. It's just like they said. And so I enjoy that a lot. It's another thing I like is Facebook. One of my favorite things. Hundreds of friends on there, and yeah, it's nice to see the scientific advances and scientific knowledge that has come out. And when I was a little kid, my grandmother would say we'd be looking out up at the moon coming up, and she'd say there's people living on there. And I thought, yeah, she might be right. And pretty much now they know that isn't true. And then when I went to school, I remember the teacher once saying the planet Venus could be inhabited by people or something like people. And I don't think they believe that anymore. It's some kind of poisonous gases on there that nobody could be living there. But yeah, I find that interesting that there could be intelligent life out there someplace. And I like watching the sky at night. Go out and look at the sky. And sometimes you see the most amazing things. One time, two very bright lights went across over to there, and as they got to the north up there, they had traveled right together. They got there, and I was watching them, and they went zip like that together, and became a bright light in the middle, and then it disappeared. I've wondered what that is for years. That's around close to 20 years ago, but it's very clear yet. Wonder what that could be.
Can you tell me about the friends that you had growing up?
The friends? I had friends that I went to school with, and they were about my age, and a few of them lived nearby. So we used to sometimes visit with them and go to Halloween parties and Christmas things that they had. And I don't know, there's not much to tell about them. They were just kids, so that's about all I know to say about them. I've got a picture there of a couple of my classes. There was a lot at the time I went to school there was a lot of immigration from Europe, because I guess they had been displaced by by the war that went through a lot of their countries. See, there's that girl was a Russian, and a lot of these kids were of Eastern European descent. I think they had moved because it was hard to live there during the war and after it. And that little boy was Dutch. That one's Dutch. And must be more than two that are Dutch. That one, I think, there was a couple of Mennonites. And they were all bigger than me, though. You can see me standing here. The girls are even taller than me. And look how tall some of these are. So, a lot of them were nice. Some of them never said much. So, that's about all I know about them. A lot of them I didn't know where they even came from, where they lived. Had one or two that I used to go visit.
Did you find that a lot of them couldn't speak English when they first came?
Yeah, there was some, yeah. I don't know where my book went, but yeah, there was a few. There was two Italian kids, and they really had a terrible time learning English for some reason. The Dutch kids learned it quicker. The Germans seemed to learn it quicker. And there was a few that never seemed to learn to talk to other people. So I don't know how they did in school. You would think it wouldn't turn out very well with not knowing the language too well. But they seemed to move on, though. They didn't stay there for years and years, just a year or two. 1 year, 2 years at the most, usually. Then they went somewhere else.
Did you and your family go to church a lot when you were growing up?
No. They never went to church. And when I grew to be a teenager, I wanted to go to church. So I went to this church and that church and the other church. I did a lot of visiting with church. And I know that subject quite well now. I did a lot of religious studying. But I still don't go to church much. I'm not much of a socializer. I don't do too much of that. I'm at home in my garden and sitting by the lake. I like to walk up to the lake, and I have certain trees that I like to sit by. But right now it's a little too hot. Oh, been an awful hot summer. Yeah, I notice it's really hotter than I ever remembered. And I remember a long time. There was hot days, like used to go by Fahrenheit, and it would get up to Fahrenheit, 100 Fahrenheit, which I think it is probably today. But we've been up near there all summer. So maybe there's something to this global warming thing. You think so? You don't know. I don't know either. I always said no. It's a hoax. It's a whatever. And this year I'm almost starting to wonder. We'll see next year. But it seems like you get, it goes up, then it goes down, it goes up, and it goes down all through the years. At one time I remember I used to ride my bicycle to work, and I remember going up the road, and I had heard that there was an ice age approaching, and I said, I think it's here. It felt like it's so cold every day that you almost believed that there was an ice age. But that passed, and now they call it global. Then they called it global warming, and then it turned to climate change. So now they're calling it climate change.
What would you say was your favorite thing about growing up on the farm?
Oh, my favorite thing. I like so many things. I'd like to be there right now. I wish I could live on the farm. I like chickens a lot. I thought chickens were wonderful things. And, I like playing in they would be digging holes for this and that, and there was so much sand under the ground. And I loved to play in these sand piles. Used to do that a lot. When I was a little kid, I wanted a pony. So I finally invented a pony for myself. And it was nothing but a stick of tree branch. And I found a little piece of a horse that had died, and there was a little piece of horse hide with fur on it, and I put that around I guess I must have tied it on with something. And I could make myself believe I really had a pony because it was an actual piece of a horse. And I would ride around all over the place, miles with this. You put it between there like that, and you ride. And kids used to do that a lot back then. So it was that was a lot of fun. And let's see, what else? Oh, the baby animals. Kids always loved baby animals, little calves and little ducks. Little ducks were nice. And baby chickens, little rabbits. One time my dad brought a little rabbit home from the field. That was wonderful. And I used to like to climb trees and take the birds' eggs and get the baby birds. And my dad got some baby sparrows, I think it was, out of the straw in one of the buildings, and reached in a hole and got these birds and gave them to me. But I don't know where they went, but next day they were gone. I think somebody let them go or put them back where they were. That was fun. But yeah. I remember the traffic on the roads when we lived here when I was 5 or 6. I guess I was 5 yet. And I remember flat sort of a wagon with rubber wheels on it, which was just starting, then, that they had rubber wheels on their wagons. They used to have wood wheels with an iron rim on them. And anyway, this went by, and a guy was sitting on it, and he had a couple of horses. And I remember the dust that it made going past down the street, 5th Street over here, where we lived. And I used to. This won't hurt this thing if I touch it, will it? Okay. I like to go to visit my grandparents who lived next door up on 5th Street, and they would be making bread, and she would make cookies and cake, Christmas cakes, and that was always fun. When I got to the farm out there, we had both grandparents and grandparents. And they all lived in the same, quite close to each other on the farm. And the grandmothers always liked to give you something good to eat. That was fun. Like to go and see the grandparents. And my grandfather died when I was, I believe, 7, and that was one of the worst things that ever happened. And that was my grandfather up on the wall there when he was young, and the grandmother here, both of them. And they were, I think they're barely out of they probably were still in their teens on those pictures. And that was the one that died first, and that was just terrible. I never quite got over that. She used to go for walks with me all the time. We used to walk up the railroad track here and around by Rogers Avenue and back to 5th Street in there, if you know where I'm talking about, where we lived. Their house and our house was right next to each other. And you could go back and forth. What else did we do here? They were always growing gardens and digging potatoes, and the potatoes were quite a important thing when they'd see how big their potatoes had gotten. I still like doing that. It's like opening Christmas presents. And the carrots, when they dig them, and some of those carrots were so big. When we moved to the farm, they were even bigger. Soil was better there. And some of the carrots would be that long and that big around, huge. My cousin and I, the one that I used to go to visit and play with every day in the summer, she came up one time, and we asked my mother if we could have some carrots to eat out of the garden, and we just couldn't stop eating those nice young fresh carrots. And that night I was so sick that I can remember it yet, that I thought I was going to die for sure. My dad went over to my other grandmothers, and they used to talk to each other. Her mother would be my aunt and my grandmother's daughter, and guess what he found out? My cousin had the exact same experience at night. She was so sick, she felt like she'd been poisoned. We just threw up carrots all night. So I never ate too many carrots again after that. That was not fun. That's a long time ago, like that has to be 65 years ago or more. And it's as fresh as can be in my mind. I wonder if she thinks so too. I don't see her anymore. They did live at Calgary, but I'm not sure if they're still there. And when I was in my early 60s, I got polymyalgia. It's a thing that's inherited, sort of. And I was so bad off that I couldn't walk to the lake. It's too far. I couldn't drive because you can't move your head around like this. And you just have to sit there straight forward. And most of the time you have to lay in the bed because you get so... there's so much pain in your joints that you can't sit. And it turned out that later I found out that she's the exact same age as I am. And guess what she got? Polymyalgia. So that's the last time I heard anything from her. She never said much after that. And apparently it's something that's in the genes. And I think that grandmother had it too. And I think my mother had a touch of it when she grew. You get it at about 60 to 65. And it'll last about no more than 2 years. Then you recover and you never know you had it. I was fine after that. Then I had a stroke when I was just about 70, I guess. No, I was just about 71 and spent my 71st birthday in the hospital. Which was not fun. And I fell, broke this hip, left hip, and I still have some pain there and a limp because they replaced the hip bone, the ball of the hip. It broke it right off, right in the back room there. I fell where the stove is on the bricks and hit it just right and broke that. I don't know I forgot what they call the hip ball. Broke the left one off. So they replaced that with a metal one. So I have titanium in me. That was bad. That was a bad memory. Probably my worst thing I ever did. I'm getting better. I hope it'll go away for a while. After a while.
Can you tell me about the story of you going with your mom to visit the lady who lives in...
Oh, yes, yeah. It was about 4 or 5, I guess, somewhere in there between 4 and 5. And her name was Mrs. Let me think. Mrs. I can't think of her name. You remember her name from the story I wrote? Mrs. I cannot think of the names with me now. Don't last very long. So we went to Simpson. That was it. And Sarah Simpson. One day, my mother decided that she wanted to go and see Mrs. Simpson for some reason. So I thought that was great because she was a nice old lady, and she always dressed in a long black dress, and she had a very Scotch accent, and she lived on Rogers Avenue, near near what is now there's a what do you call that big place with lots of apartments in it? Maybe apartments up there on the very end. She was up near that, and she had a little tiny house. It's at the tractor club now, and it was in those days it was yellow with, I think it had a black roof. If it's the same one, I hope it's the same one. I thought it must be. And there's very few people left that would probably be able to give you a certain answer about whether it is the same one. But I think it is, because it had a little bedroom just big enough for her bed in there, and it must have been spring, I think, and she hadn't moved back into her bedroom, because she had a big stove in the kitchen. The kitchen was much bigger than the bedroom, and she had this. I don't know if she had chairs or sofa or something in there too, and a table, and it took the whole floor space up, because she would live in that one room in order to save. They used to burn coal back then. In order to save coal, she would try and heat only one room, shut the door in between. And anyway, we went up the street, and finally we got to Mrs. Simpson's, and I don't know what we talked about. I know she said a lot of things, but I sort of forgot what it was all about. And she thought I was just a wonderful little kid. And I always remember her. She must have been some kind of Presbyterian or something like that. And we didn't have Presbyterians in Picture Butte, so she used to attend the United Church, the old United Church that was over on, I guess that would have been on what's now Main Street now. And she'd go up every Sunday, little old lady, almost 90, I think, and walk up there by herself in her long black dress and her black hat and her black coat, and everything was black on her. And she wasn't very big, very short little woman. And she'd go by every Sunday, and then after church you'd see her go back home. And I guess she died finally. I don't know. I don't know how that ended. And I don't know. I guess that's about all I know about her. She was a relative. She was my. What would she be? My uncle's. Oh, it's a distant thing, but they were relatives. Alwyn Stone was some kind of a relative by marriage only, I think. And she was Alwyn's wife's aunt, I think it was something like that. I forgot Alwyn's wife's name now. So that's how we knew her so well. She's a nice lady. I think she gave us shortbread to eat and tea or something like that. when we went to see her. Yeah, there's all those people like that are all gone that used to know. I have a scrapbook that I keep of when somebody has a funeral, and it's just an old magazine, and it's just packed full of things. It's like almost over 2 inches thick now because of all the clippings that I pasted in there of people we used to know here. And forgot what I was going to say. Good at that nowadays. And now you make new friends, younger ones, but it's not quite the same. They don't know the things that the old ones used to know. I used to know lots of people who were, like my grandfather there, he never drove a car. He only drove a horse and buggy. And they used to live about a mile west and a mile south of town here, and he'd drive up and down to the store or whatever in his horse and kind of a buggy, more halfway a buggy and a wagon. And I think he just had one horse. They moved up to Picture Butte from Bow Island in 1926 or so, and he brought with him his horses that were born at his farm in Bow Island. And he still used his old white horse to travel up to Picture Butte. Then he got too old to farm his little. He had three-quarter sections at different times. And he homesteaded all those in his life. 3 farms. So he finally grew too old. He wanted to quit farming. He was around past 60, and they moved to Picture Butte, and they built 2 houses there, and lived in them for around 10 years. And they all moved to the farm together, out to the Cook farm. And he never learned to drive a car. The other grandfather drove a car, but he didn't. He had a nice car, big car. He would drive to Lethbridge. He wouldn't do it nowadays, though. It'd be too busy for him. And I don't know how those grandparents got to Lethbridge when they wanted. I think they just met my dad and mother met there, and he always had a car, so I think he used to take them to Lethbridge if they wanted. And then they met over there, and then they got married. I was born, and he used to live at Picture Butte when he wasn't working on the farm, and that's the reason we moved out, because he thought 5 miles back and forth was too much traveling. So we ended up at the farm. Then once I grew up and wanted to get on to my own, I decided to buy a place in Picture Butte, and here I am. This is not the original place I had, though. I have had about 6 houses in Picture Butte. I used to rent. I rented One time I had four rental properties, and now I just rent 2 yet. And I have this house and another one on Rogers there. I grow 2 gardens because I got space for it.
What did you do after you graduated from school?
I went into, I decided to raise chickens because I like chickens so much. And I thought I'd try and make a living with raising them. And I had them around 10 years, I guess. I used to have up to, I believe I had up to 1,500 chickens at a time. And I did all that work by hand. There was no mechanization. Carry all the feed, carry all the water, clean all the stuff out and put new stuff in all the time. And whatever else. Wash all the eggs and sell all the eggs from where we lived at the farm. People all came and bought. I don't know what they would lay. They must have laid about 15 or 20 dozen eggs a day and sell all those. People always came. And I'm still known as the Egg Man when I walk down the street. There's people yet that know me as the Egg Man, and that's a long time ago. Oh, our Egg Man. I get a kick out of that. Yeah. And then after that I started, I said, I don't know, it seemed like you didn't make much profit as time went by, so, and it was a lot of work for not too much money. So I decided to go and work here and work there. Then I worked for Toshi Iamoto in his beets and his potato business. And then from there I went to Nolan Cattle Company. And I was there the better part of 20 years, I think. Cut their grass. People would come and they'd say, "Oh, that the yard is so beautiful here." So I guess I did a lot of that.
Did you ever get married?
No, I never married. I am kind of I don't know, I like my own way pretty well, so I couldn't really have lived with anyone. I enjoyed having things the way I like and do it all my own way. Still like that. I dread ever having to get somewhere where people order you around. I don't like that. I don't know if anybody does, but that would really not be much fun for me to have to live by somebody else's orders. Ooh. I was in the hospital 3 months, and that was enough. Boy, was I glad to get out of there. When I had the stroke, when I broke my hip, and there was no other choice, so I lived through it. It was fun in some ways, talking to all the other people that are there, and the nurses and the therapists and everything. It was fun in its way, but they said, "What would you like to do when you get out?" And I want to get home to my garden. That's all I could think of. I want to get out of here. No, I don't. That sort of life doesn't fit with me.
did you do after you finished working for the Nolans?
Let me think. I had to quit Nolan's because my mother got so she my mother, this is my mother's house here that I sort of went in and we bought it for my mother, and she just got too old to live by herself, and someone had to check on her all the time because she began to she would fall backwards and she couldn't get up. She had a lot of arthritis, and so I had a little house by the lake, and I would always check on her 3 or 4 times a day, and so someone had to do it, and then she got worse, and she couldn't be left alone. She couldn't walk on her own. Somebody had to go with her. So I stayed here and looked after my mother for several years, and then she finally died at I think she was 83, and I had moved here because I had to stay with her all the time, and I rented my house, and she finally got very sick and got pneumonia, and she had to go to the hospital where she died. And since I was here, I had everything here. I said, I think I might as well stay here because my house is rented out. And so I've been here since then, quite a while.
What other work have you done since then?
Only landlord. I've been landlord. I fixed up, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess I fixed up 4 houses since then. And I still have them all. Let's see. No, I sold one of them, and I have three left that I fixed up. So that was a lot of work too. I was already in my 60s then, and it's quite a job fixing up old houses. And now I'm basically retired, but I still have 2 renters, and sometimes something needs doing. I have to still do that. So I figure it's just about time to be out of that. I don't like to be called on when something goes wrong anymore. It was all right then, but I think I should, well, I hate to turn them out. I don't want to say, you've got to go. They're good renters, very good. They provide me with a certain amount of money to pay for the it pays for the taxes here on this house and the insurance, as well as their own places. And then I have another house that pays for that too. So I guess I'll keep going as long as possible, as long as I can. Everything comes to an end, seems like, doesn't it? My grandfather there was he was a sailor when he was young, and he was an excellent swimmer. So while he lived here, he became the swimming instructor at Picture Butte swimming pool. It was located near where the present one is, but they have made it, I think they made it much bigger and modernized it. But a lot of the older people that lived here, my grandfather there had taught them how to swim. They were kids then, but they've grown up and got old themselves, and a lot of them have died. But that was an interesting thing. But he never taught me how to swim. I do not know how to swim. I'm scared of water, scared to travel on a boat to England where I want to go and look at, or maybe even live there. But I can't get there because I'm afraid of going on a boat or a plane, afraid of heights too. I dare not fly. I once, Archie Warren was a well-known personality around Iron Springs and Picture Butte. And one day he says, would you like to try taking a ride in my small plane that he owned at Iron Springs? So, I thought that was going to be great. So I think I might have rode up on my bicycle to Iron Springs from the farm, and yeah, okay, we're gonna go in the airplane. And at first it felt nice and took off, and it gained altitude, and we were riding around looking down at all the fields, and the row crops looked like green corduroy down below there, and I thought that was great. And then he decided to gain altitude. Oh, that was then it hit me where I was, and all I wanted to do was get out of that airplane. When I got down, I know what I was going to do the rest of my life: never get in another one. That scared me too much. So everybody says, oh, it's nice to go on a plane. It's just like sitting in your living room, but in your living room you're not thinking about a plane crash happening or landing in the ocean and drowning. So I just can't do it. I want to go to England so bad, and I would love to live somewhere there where they came from. But I guess not. Too bad. No. That one's out.
What do you feel are the most important things in life?
Oh, to get along with other people, your neighbors and your friends and acquaintances. That's very important. I like certain nice people, and what else? Morals, good morals. Don't do things that are wrong. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't fight with people and show off and stuff like that. To me, that's you should be living in a way that you'll enjoy the next life, the next stage. I'll think it's wonderful if it's what I have been told or taught, and that's how it should be. That enjoy life, but get prepared for eternity. It's the best thing. And I think we should try to develop a life that you're happy. You should be happy living, and I think it makes you live longer, have a happy life, and get along with other people as much as possible. I don't like fighting with people.
Is there anything that you'd want people to remember about your life?
Yeah, I would like them to think that I was a nice person, that I appreciated other people, and that I appreciated having beautiful things. That I had a nice place to live, and I welcomed friends to come and visit, and got along well with my neighbors. I do usually, but once in a while it's not quite like that. Some neighbors I did not like. There is people I didn't like, and I regret that you can't like them all. They're not right, and not to my way of thinking. I've had renters that I did not get along with them, and it feels like a blot or a blotch on my life that happened. I don't like anyone that I ever had to fight with, and I hope that never happens again for the rest of my life. I like to get along well with people. Yeah. There was people in St. Michael's Hospital that I was only there 3 months, but you got to know certain people, and you were glad you met them, even though they weren't. Some of them weren't well, and others that worked in the place there, that I remember them in a nice way. There was a nun there. She was actually a nun, and I became very nice friends with Sister Caroline, her name was, and I remember her and coming visiting every day. It was very nice. I'm not a Catholic, but she was very nice. One of the nicest people in St. Michael's. Always look forward to her visiting. I don't know if she's still alive or not. She was quite elderly even then. And she was always concerned about how you're doing and everything. If you'd asked her for anything, she'd try and do it for you. So after I got out, I was going to paint a picture for them, and I don't know. I can't seem to get going to do anything like that anymore. But I thought I would get a picture of St. Francis and frame it very nice and everything. And I did that. I took it off of my computer. It was quite a large one, and I put a nice frame on it. And a friend of mine took it in and left it with Sister Caroline. And apparently it's hanging in St. Michael's on the wall somewhere there, in a nice place. And after that, of all things, along comes Pope Francis. And I thought, I wonder how that ever happened. I always think of St. Francis as the most interesting and He's a saint that even a non-Catholic would like. He was always kind to every animal. He used to talk to the birds, and there was a wolf where he lived that used to eat people, and St. Francis tamed this wolf, and it turned right around, and it was the most friendly wolf that ever lived in Italy somewhere. And it's another thing. I think I love animals, and I don't eat animals. I don't eat meat, and I don't want to even eat an egg if it's got a chance of hatching. So I like the life of St. Francis. And I hope the Pope turns out to be the same thing.
What are you worried that people might forget about the past?
Well, that they're getting too materialistic, and they concentrate on how fast everything can go. You should enjoy things like a non-human would. They enjoy their life. They raise their babies, and they live a natural life, and they don't try to hurry all the time. People are starting to, they hurry, make a lot of dust and noise, and cause accidents, to deaths and things because of their great hurry. Slow down, my idea. Live naturally. Try and live as close to natural as possible. So that would be my worry, that they're going too fast. Enjoy it, and seems to last longer that way.
Do you think a place like the Tractor Club helps people remember how life was?
I think so. It's wonderful. Wonderful to see that. Got a little village there that was, you can almost be going back into the 1920s. And that's how all little towns used to be, just like that. They need to enlarge it quite a bit, so they got more there. Take a few more houses, and wonderful to go through there. I've got to go down and visit all of them sometime, look in all the houses. Because if you were to see my house, you'd see that you've entered back into a 1930s movie in here. If you went, sometime you'll have to go through it and see it. Everything in it, there's nothing in it that's new. Not one single thing that I could think of. If I have something new, no, I gotta get rid of that, get it out of here. Somebody gives me something that looks new, I hide it. It's hidden. You could actually walk through and have a look if you want before you leave. You ought to have a look. It's a little messy, that's all. Like I was telling you on the phone. You get old, you don't hurry and get things cleaned up. And I had lots of time, but somehow it all escaped from me, and half of it didn't get done. Dusty and stuff laying all over. I like it neat, I really do. I need to get a housekeeper of some kind to come in sometimes and clean it up. I got a lot to do. I still have property, and Lots of gardens. They have to be watered on time. So summer's gone. Winter, I'm always shoveling sidewalks and sawing wood. I gather up from the Iron Springs dump there. I bring home about 15 or 18 loads of firewood a year. I gather it in the summer and fall, and then I have to saw that all. And I have a couple of chainsaws, so that helps. I used to do it by hand with a big saw like that. Oh, that was too much work. I could not do it anymore. I better not hurt this little guy. I keep fiddling with it. And so I burn all that wood, and I take all the ashes out, and have to take the ashes back to the dump again. It's amazing how small 15 loads of wood becomes when it's been burnt. It's only a very small truckload of ashes altogether. I bag them all, take them to the dump, and get rid of it. I think that's the way it should be. That's another thing I don't like. I do not like the way things are wasted nowadays. There's too much waste. They're not careful to use things carefully and farm in a way that there's not too much of an impact on the animals that are native to the area. Animals should have enough room and enough freedom to live as they always have. Do not do something that affects the wild birds or the coyotes or the eagles and the owls. That's something I'm very, very concerned about, that the animals birds and animals don't go extinct because of too many humans. I think they should try and control human population so that it doesn't impact the nature. Humans are great, but you don't want too many of them. That's all. My opinion, anyway.
I think that's all I have for questions. So if
Okay.
there's something else that you want to say about growing up in this area or just your life in general, you can go ahead.
I think I just about covered it all now. If you don't ask me something, I don't think I would think of anything else. There's other things, but well, you can't tell a whole lifetime, you know. I remember riding in my dad's 1930-something little Ford car, going back and forth here on this highway, and you would go all the way down and all the way back, and if you met a car, that was a marvelous experience back then. When in 1946, 7, 8, back in there, and it got so that you would meet quite a few cars, and now it's so much that I used to ride to work on my bicycle to Iron Springs out there, and I don't think I would dare to take a bicycle down there now with all the big semis and so many fast vehicles going by. It kind of keeps you nervous. I don't think I could do that anymore. I drive a vehicle, but I don't drive very much. Go to the dump, get my firewood, and I go to Shaughnessy and pick up my bedding plants from the greenhouse over there. If I go to Lethbridge, it's with somebody else. I don't want to drive in Lethbridge. It's too busy for me. So it shows you what kind of a personality I have. I like wild and quiet. I like to be where the animals live, and the wild animals and the birds and stuff. I wish we had woods around here. I like to be in the woods with the wild creatures. Not the big ones, of course. Not bears or wolverines or mountain lions. Those ones I stay away from. But I like raccoons and skunks if you don't touch them. And all the birds, like the little canaries. They come in my trees here. I have my own little woods right out in the front there. And I don't like when the cats come and bother you often used to see the little canaries, but there's a lot of cats around now. And I like the meadowlarks out in the country. And I like to hear the cows mooing out in the country. It's funny to hear an old cow mooing right in town here. And we're right at the edge here. So I just have to go, a few hundred yards and I'm out in the country. Go up back over the hill and there I am at the lake. The horses used to be out there. Horses would sort of visit with you when you walked along the highway there. They've stuff has moved out further. That used to be a very wild road out there, and now it's full of trucks and buildings. Yeah. Times change. It must be, I guess. I'm not in a position to move to a rural village or anything anymore. Got to stay where I am. I can't do it all again. But I would if I was younger. I'd find a smaller town or village to live in. So I was closer to the country. So I guess that's about all I can tell you. Probably think of more later on.